Welcome to this Bible study series on biblical time. This is session number 2, the Bible's clock and calendar. The Bible's clock had some notable times on it. Some of these were during daytime, others were during nighttime. What we're going to see is this is all going to build upon the first session where we had the time intervals, particularly related to the hour of the day. So, daytime events. There were 3 notable times during the day. The 3rd hour is when the morning sacrifice occurred. The 6th hour corresponded with noon, and the 9th hour is when the evening sacrifice occurred. Now, many times we think of things like sacrifices as being part of Israel's program, but they were doing sacrifices before Israel was given the law. And while we don't know what times these things occurred, I don't imagine God changed anything. So what we learn about Israel was probably going on in Genesis as well. Exodus 29, verse 39, "The one lamb thou shalt offer in the morning, and the other lamb thou shalt offer at even." So this would correspond to the 3rd and the 9th hours. And of course, it makes sense that these things aren't happening, at the beginning or the end of the day. You need time to get these things ready. You need some light in order to do things. And at the end of the day, when you've done the sacrifice, you got to clean up and people have to come and go. So it makes sense that they are close to the beginning and the end of the day without being, right on it. So it makes sense. 2 Chronicles 13, verse 11, "And they burn unto the Lord every morning and every evening burnt sacrifices and sweet incense. The showbread also set they in order upon the pure table, and the candlestick of gold with the lamps thereof, to burn every evening. For we keep the charge of the Lord our God, but ye have forsaken him." So I won't get into what that's about, but you have mention of the morning and evening sacrifices. Now, all 3 times show up in the challenge of Elijah. Hopefully you're familiar with this, but you can go read the bigger story. I'll just get into the part mentioning these times. 1 Kings 18, 26 to 29. "And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it, and called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered, and they leaped upon the altar which was made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them, and said, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth, and must be awaked. And they cried aloud, and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice nor any to answer, or any that regarded." So you have morning until noon mentioned in verse 26, and then midday is mentioned in verse 29, and the evening sacrifice. So these times are even observed by the pagans who were worshiping Baal or other devils. Now, prayer occurred 3 times during the day. Daniel 6, verse 10, "And when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled down upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime." So I'd expect this to be the 3rd and the 9th hours, and perhaps it's noon or the 6th hour as well. Psalms 55, verse 17, "Evening and morning and at noon will I pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice." Well, there you go. Psalms is telling you. Acts 10, verse 9, "On the morrow, as they went on their journey and drew nigh unto the city, Peter went up upon the housetop to pray about the 6th hour." Of course, that would be noon. Acts 3, verse 1, "Now Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour of prayer, being the 9th hour." Okay, so perhaps prayer went on for an hour. Sacrifices, if they're going on, it might take longer than that. I don't know. So let's continue with the daytime events. All 3 times are mentioned in this story. Matthew 20, verses 3 to 6. "And he went out about the 3rd hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. And he went out about the 6th and the 9th hour, and did likewise. About the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and saith unto them, Why stand ye here all the day idle? So this is the story of the parable of the vineyard laborers, and it's teaching something. But the point is, you've got these certain times of the day which meant something to Israel. These are hours of prayer, and some of them sacrifice. Now, the 11th hour, I think, just indicates the day is almost over. And the point of that is the point of the parable. I'm paying these people the same wage, even though they only worked a little while. So I'm not going to go into what the parable is about, but these times are showing up. Now, all three times are mentioned when Jesus is on the cross. Mark 15, verse 25, and it was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him. Verse 33, and when the 6th hour was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. Luke 1, verse 10, and the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of incense. So, actually, Luke 1:10 is something else, but you have in the two passages in Mark, verses in Mark, you have the 3rd, 6th, and 9th hour being shown. So Jesus is crucified at the 3rd hour. That's the morning sacrifice. Now, obviously, he's not dead yet, but at the 9th hour, he is dead. So he's really, you might say, the evening sacrifice, but he is sacrificed at the 3rd hour. It just takes him 6 hours to die. The one in Luke is Zacharias in the temple, and the people are praying at the time of incense, and not sure there might be a burning of incense, or there might be an evening one, but this would align with one of those hours of prayer. That was the point. Now, the time of incense aligns with the morning and evening prayer times, as I was saying. So Exodus 30, verses 7 to 8, and Aaron shall burn thereon sweet incense every morning. When he dresseth the lamps, he shall burn incense upon it. And when Aaron lighteth the lamps at even, he shall burn the incense upon it, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations. So, not sure if dressing the lamps in the morning means he's putting them out. Maybe they don't need them to burn, even though they're in a tent. But he's lighting them in the evening, and it could be that they have to, put more oil in them and so forth. But anyway, the burning of incense aligns with the morning and evening prayers and sacrifices. So let's flip over to the nighttime now. There are nighttime watches mentioned in the Bible, or watches in the night. Psalm 63, verse 6, when I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches. Psalms 119, verse 148, mine eyes prevent the night watches, that I might meditate in thy word. Lamentations 2, verse 19, arise, cry out in the night, in the beginning of the watches, pour out thine heart like water before the face of the Lord. Lift up thy hands toward him for the life of thy young children that faint for hunger in the top of every street. Judges 7, verse 19, so Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch. And they had but newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers that were in their hands. So you got to go read the context of that story. Gideon and his men are going to scare these soldiers, and the Lord's overthrowing them without them having to do much. But anyway, the watches are mentioned. So the Bible divides nighttime into 4 watches. Luke 12, verse 38. And if he shall come in the 2nd watch, or come in the 3rd watch, find them so. Blessed are those servants. So this is talking about the servants of Jesus being ready when he returns. And he's saying, well, if Jesus comes in the nighttime, those that are watching will be ready. They will be blessed. Matthew 14, verse 25, and in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. So his disciples are out on the Sea of Galilee, and he comes walking out to them. And of course, it's a very interesting story as to what's going on there. Matthew 24, verse 43, but know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. So Jesus says he will come in the night, and it's really a type of darkness of the tribulation, and people will not be ready, but including the thief. But those that are following him will be ready if he comes in the night. So my biggest question is, how did they determine these watches? There's no sundial. I don't know if they had some other means. The stars aren't going to give you anything on the sundial, and the moon isn't always where you'd like it to be. So not sure how they did this, or they just kind of estimated. It's been 3 hours. I'm tired. Change the watch. Now, some other terms are also used for these nighttime watches. Mark 13, verse 35. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at cock crowing, or in the morning. So at even, I would think, would be right when it becomes nighttime. Midnight would be the 6th hour of the night, the end of the second watch. The cock crowing, or in the morning. Now, the morning would obviously be dawn, the 12th hour of night. Cock crowing, I don't know how much before the sun the cock would crow. Don't know enough about it, but there are some other words used aligning with the watches, or something in the middle of some of the watches, I guess. So anyway, the Bible talks about these times with various words. Now let's look at the calendar year. So the calendar was aligned with the agricultural cycle. The year begins with seed time and ends with ingathering. This is around what we would call September. So Deuteronomy 11, verse 12, a land which the Lord thy God careth for, the eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year even unto the end of the year. So this doesn't tell us when that is, but there is mention of a beginning and end of the year. Exodus 23, verse 16, and the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. So this tells you that ingathering is the end of the year. Exodus 34, verse 22, and thou shalt observe the feast of weeks, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. Leviticus 26, verse 5, and your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto the sowing time, and ye shall eat your bread to the full, and dwell in your land safely. So the threshing would align with the spring, the vintage would align with the summer, and the sowing would align with the fall. So you're going to sow the field just before the winter comes, and then you're going to thresh, and you're going to harvest some of the crops, and then later vintage, I guess, would be more of the grapes and things. So if you're into farming at all, these things would make a lot more sense to you, and Israel's culture certainly understood them. Genesis 8, verse 22, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So after seed time, the cold of winter came, and the harvest occurred when the heat of summer came. Likewise, summer is likened to the day and winter to the night. We'll see this in much detail in a later session in the series, talking about how God has types, and he likens day and night to things in different ways. So during the night of the winter, the seeds are hibernating or sleeping. That's one way to view it. So you sow the seed just before winter comes, just before nighttime comes, and during the night, or the winter part of the year, the seeds, in a sense, you can also view them as dead. They've died in the ground, and they're going to be resurrected to life. But they hibernate or sleep, and then they spring into, some plant as you reach spring and summer. So, like the days of the week, the months have ordinal numbers, first, second, so forth. So Genesis 7, verse 11 says, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. So the second month. And you also have reference to other months elsewhere in the scripture. I just gave this one example. So in conclusion, the day was divided into several 3-hour intervals. The daytime had the 3rd, 6th, and 9th hours that were important. Nighttime had 4 watches, typically just called the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th watch. The calendar was founded upon the agricultural cycle. Now, when we get into a later session, we talk about Israel's calendar. God's going to make some changes to how Israel viewed the calendar. But essentially, the agricultural aspect of it didn't go away because that's something that was never going to come to an end. So stay tuned for more. Thank you.